Can I ask someone just to start with a prayer this morning, this week? Thank you.
Father in heaven, thank you that we can be here this morning. Thank you for the sunshine and the warmer weather. Thank you for the team that we have here and the opportunity to be part of your work. We pray for your Holy Spirit, and just like we sung about, that you would become primary in our hearts and be with Robert as he shares for a few minutes more about your gospel and about your message.
Amen. I hope that last time when we had an introduction into the life and person of Samson, you are exciting in driving the story home, which you already know. You know the story very well. However, there is this one thing that makes me always wonder. And it's not even in his story. You find this Bible verse in the New Testament in Hebrews 11. And that's an exciting chapter. And one of the most exciting points is, for me, verse 32, which says, "And what more shall I say? I do not have time to tell about Gideon, Barak, Samson, and Jephthah, about David and Samuel and the prophets," listing all the heroes of faith. And I'm like, what? Samson? That's amazing. It's like, I don't know what happened there with inspiration. Or maybe, do we? I'm like, if you look at Samson's life, the whole thing is framed with 3 scandals, all of them relating to ladies or his relationship life. And what he does in between these scandals, which is his first attempted marriage, then the story of the prostitute in Gaza, and then the end and his second marriage, Delilah. Like whatever he does in between is also very, very, has the impression of a one-sided person. I don't know if an expression like this exists in England, but we use the term muscle-brained or brain-muscled or the other way. So somebody who, rather of having a brain that is capable of thinking, has rather big muscles and thinks with them. And he appears like that. Very interesting personality. Last time we went from having some surprising details from his life, like how cleverly he deals with intimidating the enemy, like with the gate of Gaza and other things, and him being for 20 years the ruler and the judge of Israel, which is like requires a little bit more than just muscles. And going into the middle, his first battle, when he is really, really thirsty. And I told you that if you look at his life, this thirst is deeper than just for water. It's like he is always driven by something that he wants to achieve, he wants to get. And I dare to say, based on these 3 stories, even that he's thirsting for real love. Very interesting how his life starts. His name is like all Hebrew names, has its own tale. It says, son of the sun, or simply radiant sun. Can you imagine, like Samson is called, like in for the lunch, like, hey, radiant sun, where are you, my radiant sun? Come on in, we have lunch. So it's like, I mean, he is one of the only persons I know who has this blessing that the parents don't only get the baby into hand, but they get a manual with it. Like as a pastor, I was always wondering many times, like how good it would be if like the babies wouldn't be just get presents, but like also manual bit for the parents. Like some of them would be so much better off, and Samson has this blessing. So he is like growing up in this environment. I don't know if it's this that makes him sometimes, like hysterical. I don't know if you realize how strong-willed he is. He always goes after his own head. Doesn't matter what the situation is. And because he is strong, he always gets what he wants. I mean, most people would end up badly in the situation he is in. But he cuts himself out with sheer willpower and muscle power, usually, even if he's only using a bone like in the previous story. So, when his story develops, there's a point in which the stories diverge. I would say stories diverge because there's one story that we read in the Bible. However, if you go to the last verse of chapter 13 in the book of Judges, then the last verse says this. And let me read you the last two verses, 24 and 25. The woman, that's his mother, gave birth to a boy and named him Samson. He grew and the Lord blessed him. And the Spirit of the Lord began to stir him while he was in Mahanedan between Zorah and Estaol. I mean, do you remember something similar happening in the Bible? Angel appears, announces the birth, the child is born, and the people are pleased with him, and he finds pleasure in the eyes of the Lord. It's a special story. He is a special child. Growing up like this might make you, I would say, entitled. And it says that there is a time when the Spirit of the Lord starts to stir him. There is a gentle push by God in Samson's life. All that happened until this moment was because God has a plan. Do you have plans? So I don't know, in the church we do make plans. God is making plans, like he made the plan for Adam and Eve. Then he made a plan for fallen humanity. And he made a plan for Israel. And then he made a plan for those who return from Babylon. Then he makes a plan for the Christian church. And there's a great saying from one of the greatest generals, Eisenhower, who learned it from a soldier. And it goes like this. Plans are useless. Why? Because usually things don't go according to plan. And he continues, however, planning is indispensable. So God has a plan for Samson. Starts to push him, steer him. It's time, do your job. He can be the famous general of Israel who leads everybody to victory. But Samson has some other plans. So the plan doesn't come to realize. It's a very different plan than what God wanted for Samson. I'm very convinced about it. Just like God had some very different plan for humanity than what we are living in at the moment. But planning is essential because God never lets go. And Samson goes from one scandal to the other scandal. He is the same muscled guy who sometimes throws tantrums when things not go according to him, who can, in a moment of time, show some sparkling ingenuity, making short poems and psalm poetry and whatever how you name it, and rules Israel in this very unorthodox style for 20 years. And the amazing thing that he is the deliverer of Israel. So actually, why he is born is actually comes to be. But what's going to happen with Samson? God only wants to achieve God's goals and uses people as tools, or God is interested in the individuals, those who kind of go pretty badly astray, diverge from the original plan. And I think that is something. In chapter 16, as we go to the end of Samson's story, we find his marriage with Delilah. And this story is one of the most difficult stories to understand, in my opinion. I mean, can you imagine, just to stay with Samson, asking the man that you are sitting home eating, and then the wife starts to ask you how much arsen you have to stir into the soup to make it work. or you know, like, what is the best poison to put a husband away for good? I mean, it's a strange conversation, isn't it? So imagine that there is Samson, there is Delilah, and there is this conversation between them. What do I need to do to take away your strengths so the Philistines could arrest you? I mean, it's like, most probably it would be too much for a man generally, but it's not much for Samson because you already know him. He loves always taking risks. He doesn't like usual. He goes to the edge of possible and then he tests his strengths. So it's a game for him. And he starts to say the most hilarious things to his wife. Oh, you know, like, there are these 3 distinct methods of how to tie him up. And it's like new ropes that has never been used. If you tie me up with that, then like, it's like, and then it's like, what not else? You know, like, you remember the story, you know, like the sinew and whatever he comes up with. And the amazing thing that it's not just theoretical, this conversation, because they always put it to the test. So first time, Samson beats up the Philistines. So next time they don't dare to come close. the wife has to shout, the Philistines are here and let's test how the ropes hold. They are keeping respectful distance from him. And it's amazing. For the second times he says again something, and for the third times he says something. And the game goes on, because the whole life is just a game. Samson rules. And imagine, there is a turning point when the whole thing is not anymore just simply a game. And the Bible is telling this. Verse 14. Again she called to him, Samson, the Philistines are upon you. He woke from his sleep, pulled up the pin and the loom with the fabric, and again he's not tightened, like he's not bound. Then she said to him, how can you say I love you when you won't confide in me? This is the third time you have made a fool of me and haven't told me the secret of your great strength. With such nagging she prodded him day after day until he was sick to the death of it. So he taught her everything. And this he taught her everything is actually very exciting. It says he opened his heart fully. Which is kind of a strange reaction, isn't it? How can you say that you love me? And then, after some nagging, he opens his heart fully. Why? Why would he do that? And this is why I'm telling you the whole story of this strong man is trying to look for love at places that he won't find love. So, at the last scene of his life, he is bound, he lost his strength, he is blinded, he is a prisoner, he is tied to this mill like an animal, and he needs to crush the grain. What a difference it is. The man who could do anything he wanted at any time, being tied, being imprisoned, not being able to do the least human things freely. And I'm always wondering what goes in his head when he is pushing this millstone day after day. And the story records that the Philistine moms are bringing their kids and they are showing, can you see, this is our great enemy Samson. So imagine you there and you hear the conversations that are taking place at the door. Like it's the class outing for Philistine kids, like to show them history in the making of Philistine greatness. How would that feel? I mean, I don't know if I can imagine a worse situation than this. Because of me, God is put down and Dagon is lifted up. Because of me, my people are still enslaved. Because I didn't went on the road God intended more for me, things went down. Eventually, if looking back, I spoiled the whole thing. It's utter failings. It couldn't be more obvious. And at this moment, can you believe? Can you believe that there is forgiveness? Can you believe that there is a God who cares about you still? And can you pray? Like in verse 28, Sovereign Lord, meaning calling Yahweh on his name, the name of the covenant. Remember me. Strong words. And a huge request in this situation, a daring request. Sovereign Lord, remember me. Just this time. One more time. Let me be. So I think it's a life story worthy to remember when we are deepest, in whatever deepest we are in. Let it be work, let it be family, let it be sin. Remember Samson. If he could believe, if he could be a hero of faith, I think anybody can be. So that's a great news for today. And I hope you're gonna have it in your hearts for the rest of the day.